everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 12 of My Hero Academia Season 6, and last episode was pretty good. Dabi's dance is something I have waited a long time to see animated, and it did not disappoint. I was like, Hiro Shimono, who voices Dabi, is having the time of his life, and I'm so excited that he finally gets to act out through these scenes. I've been waiting to see the voice come out through Dabi. It's so good, and there's so much good left to go. I just won't spoil it for you all, but I'm really excited, and I'm really excited to actually, I've watched the English dub for My Hero, and so Jason Liebrick, if I pronounced that right, who voices Dabi, I'm excited to see him get to perform these lines as well. That's gonna be a lot of fun. So I can't wait to go back and rewatch the episode with the English dub as well. But yeah, so things were getting pretty dire. Dabi just going off the rails, thinking he's gonna fight Endeavor, and Shoto being like, I guess I'm gonna fight my brother now. Being like, I guess this is what's going on because it's keeping up with the Todorokis. Do we expect any less? And Deku and Bakugo are pretty helpless in this situation. Shigaraki is down for the count. Gigantomaki is there, doesn't know what to do. So it's like all these chaotic forces intertwined. Ida shows up to carry little cat Bakugo away. And it's like, what do we do now? And then at the very last second, Best Jeanist is apparently alive and has shown back up to help subdue Makia and Dabi and the others. So yeah, not exactly, as a manga reader, not exactly the climax I expected for this battle at all, but here we are. So now what do we do with it? And the League of Villains are all there. It's just everything's coming to a head. I feel like we've at least got this episode before the core changes, maybe. Maybe the next one too, I'm not sure. We'll talk about it after the episode to see what all we get in this one particular. But I've really enjoyed season 6. And I've enjoyed it much more than season 5. But as a manga reader, watching season 5, I was like, it's all just set up for this season. So I've been really happy with what Bones has done with this season and what we've gotten so far. So I'm excited to see what we get this episode, y'all. I hope you all are as well. But we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to dive right into episode 12 and see what happens. And we are going to do so here in 3, 2, 1... and let's do this. Well, this episode went by really fast. Really fast. There was a lot of ground covered in this episode, and yet not a lot of ground covered. It's kind of the weirdest thing. It felt like there were so many things happening at once, but honestly, we just basically Lemillion came into the battle as well as Best Jeanist. But at the same time, we went through so much, but at the same time, we're still stuck in the same place of knowing what the hell do we do with Makia and Shigaraki and everyone. And it seems like everything's just escalating to the climax of the battle. I feel like that last episode, this episode, and probably the next episode or two are going to cover the remains of what do we do with this giant conflict and see if we go back to the Liberation Front and everything else. But I definitely have spoilers that I want to talk about, but I want to go through this episode first because there's quite a lot happen. I feel like I can finally talk about some things that I've been waiting to talk about with the manga, especially looking at episode 5. And I remember reading some comments from anime-only people being like, well, what about this and this? And I'm like, well, we'll see, right? But one big thing that stands out with this episode is just Deku's sense of needing to save people. And I feel for Deku. He's our protagonist, right? He's our protagonist. He's supposed to be the hero of the story. But in this episode, Deku he does get to save Shoto. We'll talk about that. But Deku kind of has to take a back seat and let other people help. And I think for Deku, it's an interesting turn in the story is that because for the longest time, Izuku, Midoriya, he's been, I think Midorima, I'm thinking of Kuroko's. Deku he's been, the hero. He's been the one to save the day, like against Overhaul. He was the one to fight Overhaul and save the day at the end when the others' heroes couldn't, right? It all narrowed down to Deku, like, fighting the final boss in the cave, right? And here it's a totally different scenario. Here, Deku's been pushed to his limits. He's like, what do I do? And he has to rely on other people. And for Deku, that's something he's not used to. He's been solely the savior of the day up until this point, and now he has to rely on others, which is great. I like that because I think that's more realistic. It shouldn't be the Deku show every 5 minutes. Deku should be our protagonist, and at the end of the day, he does have this big moral thing he's trying to do and accomplish, but he should be able to rely on others, and I like that he can rely on others to an extent, right? Bakugo's not down for the count. Best Genius is there, Endeavor's there, Shoto's there, Ida is there, Nejire's there. Like, there are other heroes that can help. He doesn't have to be the sole person to be relied upon. And I think for Deku, this is the start of him maybe needing to realize that, because, yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of hero society. It's not one person against the world. It's these people banding together. As Best Genius says it in the most corny, cheesy way possible, it's the threads that connect them all together. I love Best Genius. I really love corny pun jokes. I think they're ridiculous and hilarious. So Best Genius has always been a hero that I love because he's so ridiculous, where he's like, "You're like a set of cheap denim, Dobby." I'm like, really? It's just, and he takes it so seriously. Best Genius thinks that he has great humor and takes pride in his puns. And the best part about it is, the most ironic, wonderful thing is that Bakugo, of all characters, admires Best Genius. Bakugo, the one who's like so tsundere and like, he's the one that his big mentor and hero is this punny guy, Best Genius, who tried to like straighten Bakugo's hair and everything. Like, it's amazing. I'm like, Horikoshi, that was the best decision you could have made, putting Bakugo in with Best Genius. So yeah, so basically all of our hopes being connected together, and we go through that recap. I thought that recap was pretty good. I liked that recap because it does a nice job of cementing like what they've been fighting for, and that every little step counts, right? It's not just one person saving the day. It's them all working together in any little way, shape, and form possible to have this big result. Like, Makia going down in this episode wasn't just Endeavor's punch that did it. No, it was Endeavor plus Genius plus Momo and all the other UA students putting the anesthetic in his mouth. Like, it was the results. Best, Mount Laney. I almost said Best Lady. She is Best Lady. But Mount Lady, like, trying to tackle him down. Like, it's the small results. It's the results of small actions all coming together and having that big impact. And I like that recap kind of demonstrates that, and also demonstrates that there is a lot of people like on death's door in this episode. Like, we see Midnight claps on the ground. Mount Lady had the spikes through her. I was like, oh my god, that was horrible to watch. Poor Aizawa is getting a blood transfusion. Gran Torino's like on oxygen. Like, it's just showing the results. Like, our hero society, despite how this battle turns out, is in a bit of a shamble because of this battle. Like, it's, and the crazy thing is, the heroes went into this battle thinking that we have these large numbers. We will just walk in, overpower the villains, minimal casualties, done and done. Nope. No! There's been lots of casualties, lots of collateral damage. Things are not good. And even if the heroes manage to drive Shigaraki and the others away, the aftermath is still pretty catastrophic. And it's not what they went in thinking would happen. So it's just kind of all gone to hell in a handbasket, no matter what direction you look at it. And Deku, he's realizing how they're all connected. But even though Deku realizes that, he still has this inkling that he wants to be the one to save them, right? And it's curious, right? It's curious because Deku has this idea that he wants to be the hero that can save people, or at least save one person. And in the weirdest ways, it kind of ties to All for One, where he wants to be the one to kind of rule over them. So even All for One and One for All, there's still that one in the title of both of those monikers. So it's like, in both scenarios, you have an individual that, even if they work with others, even if they use others, even if it's not just their own efforts creating the result, they still want to be like the one in charge or in control. It's curious. It's an interesting decision that Horikoshi makes, and it leaves a lot of things open for implications later on that we can talk about that are very fun. I like it. We'll talk more in the spoiler corner. But yeah, I don't remember if the whole thing with Best Genius getting ready to fly out of the plane, I don't remember if that's anime only or not. I don't remember this from the manga. So I kind of liked Best Genius has listened to Dabi's monologue this whole time and is realizing while he's been out of commission, he's realized just kind of how deteriorating things are getting and realizes what Dabi's trying to do. He's trying to get, hero society, to be looked down upon by the masses. And Best Jeanist even says, he's like, a time like this when the faith in heroes is wavering, when they were unable to prevent great damage. Yeah, Best Jeanist kind of gets it. He's like, we thought we were timing out this attack on the villains perfectly, but they kind of timed it out really well as also, because both sides did some calculations and some manipulation, especially on the villain side of it, to kind of strike while the iron's hot. Which is a very fun pun when you're talking about Dabi and Endeavor, right? But yeah, Bones goes all out with the Best Jeanist animation. They like animating Best Jeanist in this episode. There were some really good shots. And Lemillion, too. We'll talk about Lemillion. But Lemillion, there was the moment where Lemillion went through the Nomu. That part was nicely done, Bones. And then Bones just continues to make Dabi look hot and amazingly animated, even when he's literally on fire. Oh my god. The voice acting with Yuki Kaji is just wonderful. I do like that despite all this, normally in any other series, when Best Jeanist shows up and Dabi was like connected with the threads, Dabi would be like, well, how are you still alive? And he'd be detected. No, Dabi at this point, Best Jeanist is like, oh, you're still alive? Okay, whatever. Still on the Endeavor must go down bandwagon. I'm just like, Dabi's conviction. And then Bakugo being like, they said he was missing. I love that little smile Bakugo has, because it feels like he knew Best Jeanist was okay. And he was like, in his heart, he knew Best Jeanist was fine. And he was like, just waiting for the confirmation. Because I'll be honest, throughout all of the manga chapters leading up to Best Jeanist showing back up alive, I remember that I was theorizing, like, I had this big theory that it was going to be like Bakugo versus Dabi, because Bakugo would find out that Dabi would tell Bakugo about Best Jeanist being dead, and Bakugo would be like, no, he's my mentor, and then he'd be like, well, it's Hawks' fault because Hawks killed Best Jeanist. And I had this whole thing in my head laid out where after Bakugo and Dabi had their confrontation, he would go and like confront Hawks about Best Jeanist being dead. There are implications with this. On the one hand, I like Horikoshi being like, no, it's the threads of hope. And it's very comic booky what Horikoshi does with Best Jeanist coming back. I remember this kind of being controversial at the time in the manga in some discussion forums, because people were like, it seems kind of hokey that Best Jeanist comes back. And I'm with them to an extent. There's one side of me that's like, I almost wanted Best Jeanist to be dead so that Hawks would have more implications as a morally gray hero, and so that Bakugo would confront him and be like, you killed a hero as well as a villain. And it would really cement Hawks being in this gray area because he's killed both a hero and a villain. So part of me wanted that to be what happened, but then, one, from a narrative standpoint, how are we all getting out of this? Well, Best Jeanist do with the ropes makes a lot of sense, and he has an ability, a quirk that would make that feasible. But two, it's very comic book, and at the root of My Hero Academia, it is a comic book based anime. It is very much based in Western traditional comic books. I read the Justice League in the early 90s. There were some bizarre plots in that story, and Best Jeanist coming back from the dead to help them very much reads like a 1990s Justice League side story. For some reason, I always associate Best Jeanist with like Plastic Man and him in the old 1990s DC comics for the Justice League. They just have a similar vibe. But yeah, the whole entrance of Best Jeanist, I'm like, okay, Horikoshi, you're tapping into your 90s comics roots. I get it. I'm here for it. It's fine. But I do think that if he had gone the other route, it definitely would have been darker. But I think it could have been cool if Best Jeanist was dead and then Hawks had some implications. Not that he doesn't already, but I think it would have added to the fire and made some interesting conversations. But what can we do? We can't have that now, so whatever. And I like that Bakugo gets to show his mentor, his name. We'll get to that damn name. But yeah, I like that Dabi's just like, what? You're supposed to be dead. And he's like, Hawk said he killed you. And then Dabi's like, whatever, it doesn't matter. My past still isn't going to disappear just because you're here. I've still influenced others. I do like what Bones does in this episode in making Dabi just on fire the whole time. He's just like Endeavor. He's just burning blue. And he looks good in the blue flames, even though it's like deteriorating his body as we speak. I like that Spinner and Shigaraki are tied together in all of this. And that Spinner has constantly been like a connector for Shigaraki. And so he's like, hey, what we gonna do now? Motivation, and trying to figure out how to get Shigaraki to give Makia an order, right? Because as they established in this episode, for sure, Makia is his strongest when someone's given him an objective. When he has a clear-cut goal, that's when he's his strongest. And the anesthetic has slowly been seeping in his system, but Spinner and Compress wouldn't know about that, right? Poor Nejire, though. Nejire just getting, like, just flamed by Dabi. And there's a part of me that was like, I remember when the manga came out, Shoto being like, Shoto still having tears in his eyes. By the way, this whole episode, because his older brother is Dabi and is trying to make their lives living hell. Him, like, crying out to Hado-san, Hado-sensei, Hado-senpai, Hado-senpai. I remember in the manga, some people were like, Shoto and Nejire being a ship. Why not? I'm a multi-shipper, you know, let's get this crack pairing going. There's a big part of me that ships Nejire with Lemillion. There's a big part of me that ships, I do ship Nejire kind of with Shoto. A little bit. She's only a couple of years older than him. Yeah, let's do it. Her surge quirk, his half hot, half cold. Why not? Although my headcanon is that I would like Shoto's child, if he ever has one, to not have a quirk. I think that would be like the ultimate symbolic. His kid doesn't have a quirk at all. They're quirkless, and it would kind of be like, you know, and then if Endeavor became a grandpa and like was able to be a grandfather of that kid, if Endeavor was totally fine with that kid not having a quirk and not carrying on the family legacy, right? That's my headcanon. I would like that if that were ever the case. If we showed Shoto with a kid, they just didn't have a quirk. Just quirkless, and that was it. I don't know. But I remember this part of the manga coming out and everybody being like, Shoto and Nejire? And I was like, But I think more so, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that Shoto's just like, my friend's getting hurt by my older brother who's off the rails. It's like when your friends, you know, meet the one part of the family that you're like, I really wish you don't talk to them because they're kind of bad news. And then Dabi is like the worst aspect of it. Like, thankfully, Ida's there to get them. Ida's just bouncing around, grabbing everybody. Ida's saving everybody, and it's, you know, what do we do? And then we have Deku being like, I need to stand up and do something. Meanwhile, as he's saying that, Best Jeanist is like, okay, if the number one hero is defeated here, it's going to be a complete disaster. So come on, Endeavor, snap out of it. I love the imagery of there's the wires making the triangle, and then there's Endeavor at the bottom of the triangle, Shoto's on one side, and Dabi's right in the center of it. Like, no matter what you think of Endeavor, the idea of a parent watching their two children fight to the death as one child says they want to kill their father and make them as miserable as possible. It's some damaging stuff there. Like, Endeavor is not getting out of this battle without some heavy emotional damage. Like, I think the moment he figured out that Toya was Dabi, he was just like, what do I do with myself now, right? And I do love that Bones, they animate him so well, right? And then meanwhile, there's so many meanwhiles in this episode. It's like we cut from one thing to the other. Like, just the chaos multiplies upon itself. And so we have Shigaraki remembering his home. And this part was so sad because, again, you tie Dabi and Shigaraki together. You have Dabi, who is so resentful of his father and how he was raised. And then you cut to Shigaraki, who is so resentful of his father and how he was raised. And it's the craziest thing. You have Dabi, who's literally burning from within with this hatred towards his father. And then you have Shigaraki, who talks about itching all the time, and he only itches when he's at home because that's where all of this, you know, hatred is from his father. And seeing that vision, it's interesting. I know a lot of people ship Shigaraki and Dabi because they have similar upbringings. It's why a lot of people ship Hawks and Dabi as well. But we'll talk about that in the spoiler corner. But I do love that Shigaraki's just like, I just want everything destroyed. Like, he's like, there's nothing, there's no hope or happiness in my life. Let's just wreck it all. And that's all Makia needed to know, right? And we cut back to Burnin. Like I said, I do love Burnin's design. I would so cosplay as her. The only thing is that hair would be a nightmare to try to make. That hair would be a nightmare. And you could make the little fire extinguisher. If you had like a 2-liter bottle, you could paint it and do some cutouts. You could make that work if you didn't want to strap a legit 50-pound fire extinguisher to your side. But yeah, you could make that work, but God, that hair would be hard. So, all right, let's talk about Lemillion. He pops into this. If I'm remembering correctly, as the Dune worm snake goes after Burnin, in the manga, if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like in the manga, again, Bones is getting a little overzealous. They're spoiling their own surprises, which I'm like, Bones, what you doing? Because in the manga, it shows the thing going after Burnin, but we don't see what happens. So we're like, oh, is she gonna die? We don't know. And then Lemillion shows up to save Best Jeanist, and that's when we're like, oh, Lemillion's here. Like, the chapter ends with Lemillion popping up, and we're like, what? So I do feel a little bit sad because I'm like, Bones, you're spoiling your own surprises. You didn't have to show. You could have shown a flashback to Burnin, like, getting saved by Lemillion, real quick, cut back to it, and come back to this. So that part, I'm like, why'd you do that? Like, it was so cool to see it actually happen in the manga, Lemillion show up. And I'm like, of course everybody knows who Lemillion is. Why do you need to remind us? It's like the Best Jeanist. You saw the BJ belt buckle and all the denim. You know it's Best Jeanist. You see the red cape. You know it's Lemillion. You don't need to focus on it. So I'm like, I feel like Bones sometimes thinks their audience has forgotten. And I'm like, no, it's been 2 years. We still haven't forgotten. So it's like, but then, again, Yuki Kaji, God, the voice acting between him and Shimono, I love it. Where he's just Yuki Kaji, playing Eren Yeager has taught him to just scream. And I love the tomb. I love the fire, the red fire versus the blue fire. And this part here, where Shoto, this part in the manga was great. And they acted it so well here, where Shoto's like, you said you pushed villains to act. Your brother nearly died. He's like, you nearly killed Natsu, the one you cried to. He's like, you love your brother, right? But you nearly endangered him. Why would you do that? And this is the part that it was like, nope. He's like, if Natsu had died, what would you have done? And this is the moment where Dabi says, that would have been fine. I just wanted to hurt Endeavor. That's it. Like that, at that moment in the manga, it's like, oh, like at this point, Toya is dead. It's Dabi. Toya Todoroki is dead. He died in the fire. It's Dabi who's been reborn through the flames, and Dabi doesn't care. Dabi's like, as long as I make Endeavor suffer, I don't care if my siblings die. I don't care if he just says about Natsu. Now if it was Rei, I don't know. I don't know. But he just doesn't care what happens to any of them. He wants to kill Shoto. He wants to kill Shoto because that's his father's masterpiece, and he thinks that will hurt Endeavor the most. But the thing about it is, Endeavor's already hurting just by the fact that Dabi's fighting them. So, I mean, props to you, Dabi. You've managed to hurt Endeavor quite a bit. And Shoto's just like, at that point, Shoto realizes, okay, my brother is off the deep end. Does not care if any of us are hurt. He just wants to make our dad suffer. And the funny part is that for a long time, I feel like Shoto wanted to make Endeavor suffer as well. Not by killing his siblings, obviously, but he wanted to make Endeavor suffer by not being, the one to surpass All Might and going his own way. There's a part of Shoto that I think identifies with Dabi being like, I know what it's like to want your dad to suffer because I did too, but not like this. Not at the expense of others. Certainly not at the expense of your siblings or your other family who have also been affected by Endeavor. So it's like, I feel like Shoto at this point realizes, yeah, my brother might be a wee bit of a lost cause. And he says, are you crazy, you bastard? And Dabi's like, yup. Like, yeah. And the voice acting from Shimono when he says, yeah, Shoto, I am. He says, your big brother can't feel anything anymore. Like, there's a part of you that's like, damn it. Dabi can't feel, it's like, to Dabi, it's over. He's like, I don't feel anything anymore. I'm completely apathetic and numb to it all. I just want to make my dad suffer and burn out. Yep. And it's like, what do we do with that, right? God. And then Shoto even calls him Toya still. He's like, I can finally kill you. Yeah, like, and the thing about it is that Dabi says you were raised as a kind boy, and it's like just us as the audience knowing everything Shoto's been through, and the fact that he's a kind boy despite all of that. It's like, Dabi, I love Dobby, by the way. I'm the biggest simp for him, but his character's so flawed and like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And I'm just like, damn it. So yeah, and so we come back to Compress and Shigaraki that are like, we need to accomplish, like it all does feel like a trap. Like in the craziest of ways, everyone was brought there as a force to go against the heroes, and it's kind of backfired on them, and now it feels like they've been trapped by the heroes. Which with Best Jeanist they kind of have been, right? They kind of have been. But Deku is sitting there being like, no matter how, it won't matter that my limbs aren't working properly. I need to save someone. Like Deku's like, I haven't saved anyone yet. He's like, everybody else is fighting and I can't do anything. And I'm like, Deku, you've done plenty. You fought quite a lot. It's okay to sit back and let Bakugo steal a little bit of the spotlight, right? It's okay for that to happen. But Deku's like, nobody's been saved yet. Which is like, ugh. And poor Deku, his self-sacrificing self and him getting onto himself being like, don't be someone useless who can't save a single person. I'm like, you have saved people. You just don't want to acknowledge it. I'm like, damn it, Deku. Come on. And then I love that Lemillion shows up. Like in the manga, that's when he popped up and it was like, there he be. And I feel like they give us maybe a little bit more in the anime than they do the manga, just like a little smidge more, but showing how Eri has been working on using her power of rewind on lizards and snakes and stuff to regrow limbs to test it. And then I love her with the little ponytail, and I love her saying like, I'm going to use my power to bring yours back, Lemillion. I also like Nejire standing there with the outfit. I love her like big boots and everything. It's cute. And her hair all down. And Deku's there with the tea, right? And I love Eri's like, this is what I've been training for. And it's such a great callback to season 4. It's so great to see Eri being like, I want to save you like you've helped protect me. And it's like, so cute. So damn cute, right? It's great. But yeah, she's like, it's so cute. Her like helping to reverse his powers. And then, yeah, she basically rewound so that he could go in there and fight again. It's great. I love it. So yeah, Lemillion, even though he's helping, it's not enough. He can't fight all the Nomu and Makia and everything at once. You can use his powers, but it's not going to be like a save all moment. Like Lemillion being there is a big help, but it's not going to be the crux that stops the battle. And so then we have Bakugo. Again, meanwhile, Bakugo's realizing his little explosions, his rainbow explosions. Tying back to when he like was doing a do or die thing to save. They were distinct, fast, and strong explosions to go save Deku. And he's like, I've never felt anything like it. And I'm just like, as somebody who does ship Bakugo and Deku together, I'm like, wow, you didn't experience anything like this until you sacrificed your life to save, Deku. Okay. And it's a rainbow explosion. Okay, sure, Horikoshi. Yeah, sure. Okay. I do love that. But he decides to go in and save Best Jeanist, and he cuts back to Best Jeanist. That's a really good shot of Best Jeanist against, I'm going to get a shot of that, Best Jeanist against Bakugo's little explosions. And we cut back to when Best Jeanist, way back like in season 3, way back years ago, when he was like, whenever you're ready, I'll be ready to hear your hero name. And Bakugo's like, fine, it's time. I love that a lot of people thought that his name was going to be like Ground Zero or something like that. And it's fine. It's cool. But honestly, no, this name is absolutely perfect. It's just so good. He's like, from today on, I'll be known as Great Explosion Murder God Dynamite. I'm like, Jim GD. I remember there were so many pissed off people in the manga when this happened because they were like, well, what about Ground Zero? What about his badass name? What is this? And I was like, no, Bakugo is still like a 15-year-old who thinks so highly of himself. And he couldn't decide on a name. And he wanted like the biggest name possible. So I was like, the Great Explosion Murder God Dynamite is so humorous, and it's such a great like play on. I think Jeanist calls him Dynamite, and he's like, no, there's more to it, and he's just like Dynamite. But I love that Ida calls him by his full name. He, like, Bakugo's about to yell at Ida, and he's like, "Great explosion, murder called dynamite. Are you sure?" And he's like, "Damn it, you call me by a hero name." And I just love that everyone in the moment, it was so damn funny in the manga, where Best Jeanist is like, "Childish." And Ida's like, "It's so long." And Nejire's like, "It's violent." And I love that all the villains are like, "Lame. So lame." And Lemillion's like, "Good job." Lemillion's like, "It's great. You're fine." It was wonderful. I love that. It was just, I love that. I was wondering for a second if they would like have the record scratch and everybody stops what they're doing to be like, but they just carried on in the moment and kept the pace going. And that works just as well. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, again, Lemillion still going off to fight. He looks a lot like All Might there with the cape and everything. Again, like Night said, if anybody was going to surpass All Might, at least as far as being like this symbol of peace, it's definitely Lemillion. Lemillion, I love his design. It looks so much like All Might. And then meanwhile, we have Dabi who's just going around. Like, I love that you have Shoto who's firing off the little jet engine thing with one leg, and then you have Dabi doing the same with both of his. And he's like, "Wow, there looks like they're having fun." And then him just hugging Shoto, trying to burn him. Which luckily Shoto has the ice part, so he doesn't overheat. But like Dabi just trying to burn him. You poor thing. Oh, it's so good. And Shoto just being like, "You bastard." It's like, "Your body's burned." He's like, "I'm glad you were raised to be a kind boy." And it's like, God, like not for lack of trying. He's like, "I'm really happy right now. Look at our dad's face." Yeah, and poor Endeavor. Like, Endeavor's just like, my two children are just fighting to the death. Like, Endeavor's just crushed. He's broken. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "I'm going to kill you and cement it," right? And then I do think that the face they give Dabi looking at his dad, it is not the face of someone that looks victorious or happy. It's the face of someone like in pain. In pain. Because all Dabi has wanted is his father's approval. And the fact that he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to make my father suffer." But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, does Dabi really want his dad to suffer? Or does he want his dad to love him? And he's like, "Fine, I'll kill my brother if it means making you realize the mistake you've made." Like, it doesn't, like, Dabi just looks in pain. Like he's suffering the whole time. And it's like, Horikoshi, why do we do this? Why do we do this? What you doing? But no, and then Deku. If you are a Todoroki and Deku shipper, then this moment was right up your alley. Because Deku's like, "I'm going to save my friend." And he's like, Lemillion and the others are backing up Genis, so this is something I can do. I can help Todoroki. And he's just literally using his tongue like Froppy to use Black Whip. It's like, what the hell? And I love Dabi says, "Hey, don't poke your nose to other families' business." And the shipper in me is like, well, he could become family in the future, so you know. Maybe it is his business. And yeah, he just breaks Black Whip. And poor Deku, he's like, "It is my business. Because Todoroki's a good friend. And Endeavor's my teacher." So he's like, "I do feel like it's my business because I care about them." And he's like, "Yeah, the past won't disappear." Which is why I'm looking at Endeavor, who's working hard. Yeah, he's like, "Yeah, no, you're right. The past isn't going to disappear. But that's why Endeavor's moving forward. Because he has to work despite that." It's like, oh my God. But yeah, but Dabi's just like, he's like, "You're not Endeavor." And I love that Dabi's like, "No, I'm not." But Endeavor at that moment is like, "Okay, my son is not, he's doing things that are outside of my control. He's doing things that he made on his own decision, his own volition." And he's like, "I can help somehow." And he's like, "Deku is doing my job for me, so maybe I should stand up." And Deku's like, "Don't talk about Endeavor's flames. This is your quirk doing it. You're in control." Again, tying back to Shoto from season 1 and season 2, where Deku was like, "You're not your father." Like, he told Shoto, he's like, "Your flames are your own. Your quirk is your own to use for however you want to." He's telling the same thing to Dabi, being like, "Yeah, Endeavor's your dad, but he's not you. You don't have to do this." And Dabi's just like, Yes, everyone knows that. I like that Dobby just starts to throw it back in his face. Like, Shoto took that as a moment of, oh, I'm not my father. What a learning moment. Dobby's like, no shit, Sherlock. It just goes the polar opposite direction. And I kind of love it. He's like, no. He's like, but don't you feel bad for me? And it's like, yeah, a part of you kind of does. But then you're like, Dobby, you're just making it so much worse. And then Deku's like trying to stop the situation. And then Endeavor steps up to knock Maki out. He's like, I can't fight my sons. At this point, we know Endeavor cannot fight his sons. Either of them. Todoroki or Dobby. And so he's like, the only thing I can really do now to help is try to knock Maki out. And luckily, right as he hits him, that's when the anesthetic kicks in. Right? And then we see everybody like just in turmoil. And he's like, man, things are just looking pretty grim, right? Just as things were starting to heat up, right? Dobby tries to put in like a heat pun. What the hell? And then Shoto's like, your body is overheating. Like, you're going to be at your limit. He's like, I've got the upper hand. And he's like, well, of course, you're daddy's masterpiece, so why wouldn't you? And it's like, oh my God. As your big brother, I'm so proud. It's just ridiculous. And then I like the fighting of Lemillion versus the Nomu and everything there. And then we cut to Compress, who's saying the binding is so neat that I can't touch the cables. I need to be able to touch them to activate my compress ability, but I can't do it. He's like, all I can do is grope around my own behind. And he's like, Shigaraki, you're no better. We're trapped in this situation. And Dobby and Toga, everybody's fighting. What do we do? And so then they get bound even more. And Compress says he'll show us all the greatest show. And that's where we're in the episode. So, I still have spoilers I want to talk about. I want to talk about spoilers in the spoiler corner. But there's so much happening in this episode. It's kind of crazy. All the stuff that gets accomplished. And I don't feel like they really rushed through anything, if I'm being honest. I feel like, for the most part, the episode went through the manga about the same pace that it has been doing. So, I mean, what else can we say about it? I feel like I felt the pacing was good in this episode for everything that was coming out. When the manga was going on, this was all very chaotic. And it was just like week to week we were going, what is Horikoshi going to give us next? And we're not done. So that's all I can say. But I do want to talk spoilers and I want to talk about some things. But if you're not sticking around for the spoiler corner, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. Thank you all so much for watching. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And I'll be back next week, or hopefully it's next week. I don't know if they're going to take a week off for Christmas or not. I'm recording this on the 17th for Patreon Monday, and then it'll be out YouTube the following week. So I don't know if they're going to take a break off between this episode and the next. We'll see. But anyway, I'll see you all when we get to episode 13 of My Hero Academia Season 6. I was hoping that they cut off when they did. I'm glad they did. I was like, Bones, you got a little too overzealous with Best Jeanist. You got a little overzealous with Lemillion. Do not ruin the Compress surprise before next week. And they don't! So yay! I'm very excited to hopefully see, as I hope they do the anime justice, because in the manga, surprising no one, in tradition with the League of Villains, Compress is hot. The biggest surprise of the year is that Compress is actually like a dime. So, just like the size of his marbles that he compresses into, Compress is a dime. A 10 out of 10. I'm like, Compress is so hot, and it's like, I hope they do him justice. I really do. Because I remember the manga people were like, wait, what? Like, why are we getting this all at once? Lemillion's back, Dobby has his dance, Compress is hot. What? It was like just a win. A win all around. But I did like this episode quite a bit. There is a lot, like I talked about in the reaction, I think this is, in hindsight, a very good setup to Deku realizing that you expect him to realize that he does not have to do this all on his own. You expect him to realize that he can rely upon others. The funny thing is, if we're going into the second half of this season, and if it's going where I think it's going, that Deku is going to kind of retreat from that idea for a while, where when this battle's over, he's going to be like, if I had been stronger, if I didn't involve the others, then they wouldn't have been hurt by Shigaraki and All for One. If I just faced Shigaraki on my own, they wouldn't have gotten involved, nearly gotten killed, and all this bad stuff would have happened, which is not the right mindset to be in. But Horikoshi makes Deku go through that angst arc, and it's an angst arc. I'm like, I'm really hoping Bones does it justice, because the animation style, it was right around the time that the mangaka for Berserk passed away. I remember that happening in the manga, and I put a post on Tumblr about it at the time when I was using Tumblr more than before I even had my channel, because I've done a lot of posts for My Hero Academia and Haikyuu on Tumblr. But I remember posting that, like, the mangaka of Berserk, when he passed, it felt like Horikoshi kind of stepped up and paid homage to him, making Deku look super like sketched out and like dark and grim, kind of like the Batman comics too. I don't think Bones will do it justice, because it's such a tonal shift in the art style, but I hope so. We can hope, right? But I feel like Deku, he just completely does the 180 from where you think he's going to realize, being like, oh, you can rely upon others, to him being like, nope, it's just me. And UA has to come together to be like, Deku, no. So I'm going to be curious to see how much of that we get in season 6 in the second core. I'm going to be very curious to see how we go with that. I feel like we're going to get Lady Nagant in the second core. I'm very excited, because I like Lady Nagant a lot. I don't think we're going to get Stars and Stripes this season. I think they're going to save her for season 7. I think they're going to save Stars and Stripes for that, which will be a fun time. But yeah, Best Jeanist, I feel like his whole appearance in here was great. They don't really talk about it in this. I can't remember in the manga if it's after the battle when they talk about it, but they kind of just skip over it. Like, Dabi's just like, you're alive? How? Oh, well. Again, the reasoning is kind of ridiculous. It's just something about like his organs getting replaced or something. It's very plot conveniency that Best Jeanist lives, but whatever. Again, it's very comic book-esque. I personally would have liked Best Jeanist to have been dead, but then I wonder how could we have gotten out of this plot point without Best Jeanist. So it almost feels like Horikoshi sort of wrote himself into a hole where he's like, I gotta bring Best Jeanist back. I can't get around it. For them to properly get out of this situation and this not drag on infinitely, Best Jeanist and the Wires needs, it either needed to have been a whole new hero we've never even heard of that wouldn't have had the impact that Best Jeanist would have had, or Best Jeanist would have had to come back. So I get it. It's not the best plot point in writing, but I get why they did it. And it works. It does work for this episode. Lemillion coming back is great. I do feel like Bones kind of screwed the pooch a little bit with that, with showing him too early against Burnin. But I like Lemillion coming back. I like the Aries powers being developed so that she can rewind. I personally think, and I know several manga people think this as well, that I think Eri is going to eventually replace Recovery Girl, because Recovery Girl can't live forever. She's old as dirt right now. I feel like Eri is being set up as a healer, and that she's going to replace Recovery Girl eventually and be one that can help heroes recover or, rewind injuries, to an extent. But of course, there'd be a limit. She can't do it forever, because otherwise things could go wrong. So I feel like there'll be a limiter on there, but that she can help them heal to an extent, right? I feel like they are setting up for that. But man, yeah. So Shoto versus Dabi, God. And right now in the manga, Dabi is about to fight Endeavor, and it's just... it's just crazy. I haven't seen the new chapter that's coming out tomorrow. I'm definitely going to read it. But yeah, just... the thing I wanted to talk about with Dabi and Toya and Shoto, Todoroki, and Endeavor, I'm going to put a spoiler note up here because it does involve Attack on Titan spoilers from seasons 3 on. So if you've not watched season 4 or season 3 of Attack on Titan, especially season 4, if you've not watched that, just skip until this is gone. But it hit me watching this episode. I was like, not only is Yuki Kaji playing Shoto Todoroki, he's also playing Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan, who both have older brothers that have horrible vendettas against their fathers. I was like, oh shit, yeah! I was like, Dabi has this big vendetta against Endeavor. Zeke has this big vendetta against Grisha. The hell? The big exception is The big difference is that Grisha is not nearly as awful to Eren as Endeavor was to Shoto growing up. But it is kind of something different, right? You have Endeavor and Grisha, two father figures that were not great to their first sons in a lot of respects, but then there were reasons for the things that they did. And then with their second sons, it's kind of interesting because you have Endeavor, who put all of his ambitions into Dobby, just like Grisha put all of his ambitions into Zeke. And then you have Zeke and Dobby, who both became very much entrenched against their fathers because they couldn't live up to the expectations that their fathers had placed on them. It's exactly the same. You had Zeke, who couldn't live up to Grisha's expectations, Dobby, who couldn't live up to Endeavor's expectations with their limitations. And so both the fathers kind of just became a little bit deranged with their sons about it. The thing that's curious about it is Grisha fully goes kind of crazy against Zeke at the start and then realizes his mistakes with Eren and completely changes his tune. And Eren grows up in a much better environment with a great dad and a great mom. Then you have Endeavor and Dobby's case, where Endeavor realizes that his son could die from overheating, and so he starts to place his ambitions more into Shoto, who is what he wanted quirk-wise, and Dobby gets so offended and mad about it. But then later, Endeavor's really bad with Shoto, and it ruins their family, and then Endeavor ends up atoning for it later on. So the circumstances are a bit different, but it's both Dobby and Zeke are both two sons whose fathers they felt done wrong by, and dedicate their lives to kind of getting back at them for it. It's crazy, right? And then poor Yuki Kaji has to voice the two younger brothers in both situations, except in Attack on Titan. In Attack on Titan, Eren is not trying to reform Zeke and, and avenge his father. That's not really the case. Not exactly. And then in this, Shoto's trying to help his dad and try to get Dobby to realize the errors of his ways. It's kind of amazing. It's really amazing when you think about it. I was like, wow, Horikoshi and Isayama. Interesting. Huh. This whole thing about younger sons, right? Very, very, very curious. But that just dawned on me in this conversation between the two of them in this episode. And I was like, wow. So, end of Attack on Titan spoilers. No more of that. But yeah, I can't wait till we see Compress. It's going to be great. The murder explosion dynamite, I talked about that. I'm all for it. I think it's hilarious. And it's very, very comic book. I absolutely think it's wonderful. I love that Best Genius is like, we waited all this time and that's your hero name. It's great. It's great. But also, yeah, I did want to make note, the sparkles of Bakugo's explosions. I didn't know if I wanted to mention this in the regular discussion or the spoiler corner. It felt like something that needed to be in the spoiler corner, especially with what's going on currently in the manga. But I feel like the rainbow sparkles on Bakugo's explosions kind of remind me of the sparkles with One for All. Just saying. They kind of look a little bit. I know a lot of people are conspiracy theorizing with the whole Heroes Rising, if it has to do with Bakugo being connected with One for All, if that's a thing, and in the manga, if we're going to get tie into that. But I just, watching this, I was like, wow, his explosions do kind of remind me, the sparks remind me of One for All. And the little sparkles and stuff around Deku as the different, users, their kind of consciousness transfer and move around in Deku's mind. So I thought that was really interesting. I liked that a lot. And then, yeah, again, Endeavor is broken. Endeavor at this point, he's just a broken man. I'm really excited to see Ray give him a what for and snap him back to reality. I'm ready for that. But yeah, God, that look. And now I feel like with the current manga, Dobby is gonna die and he's gonna just burn alive. But I again, Attack on Titan spoilers, I guess I'll do a little reprise here. I wonder if, like with Zeke and Grisha, if Dobby will have a moment later on where, as he's dying, he realizes that Endeavor didn't hate him and realizes what was going on, and will have a moment before he dies where he's like, sorry, Dad, or I forgive you, Dad, or something, or some kind of connection, even if it's not forgiveness. I wonder if Dobby will have that moment with Endeavor like Zeke had with Grisha in the paths and in the memories, if they'll have that similar moment. Because in Attack on Titan, Zeke kind of comes to terms with Grisha at the end. So will Dobby come to terms with Endeavor? I don't know. Again, end of Attack on Titan spoilers. End of that for real this time. But yeah, so we've ended the episode. I'm very happy they ended this episode with Compress about to show his greatest show on Earth. That's such a bizarre set of chapters. And it's going to be the conclusion of the battle. So I think that next episode will be the last one with the current core of the OP and ED. And then we'll transition in episode 14 to the new one. Could be wrong. But I feel like that's going to be the case. So I probably will not react to the OP and ED lyrics next episode. I'll wait till episode 14 just to be safe. But then once we do that, we'll go back and look at the English lyrics for the OP and ED. Because I am excited to see what they are. I'm very curious about them. So I would want to go back and read those. But in any case, I like this episode a lot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I hope you all did too. I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. But next week, hopefully if we get episode 13 next week, I'll see you all then. And if we have to wait a week until the new year, then we'll just do that. I'll probably have some other reaction in this time slot to take its place. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back hopefully very soon with episode 13 of My Hero Academia.